Welcome to the Country Watch Political Intelligence Briefing Quick Hits, a weekly briefing of hot stories across the world in brief. I'm Denise Youngblood Coleman, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief and Senior International Affairs Analyst at Country Watch. This week, the featured country is the United States. On July 27, 2021, more than 6 months after the attack on the Capitol, the House Select Committee investigating the unprecedented act of insurrection held its first hearing. On the panel were 7 Democrats. At the helm was Benny Thompson of Mississippi, the committee chairman. Also on the committee were Adam Schiff of California, Zoe Lofgren of California, Peter Aguilar of California, Jamie Raskin of Maryland, Elaine Luria of Virginia, and Stephanie Murphy of Florida. Also on the panel were 2 Republicans, Liz Cheney of Wyoming and Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. The first day of testimony was marked by emotional, gut-wrenching, and distressing recollections from 4 police officers who described their experience of being attacked by the violent rioters. Officer Fanone described how he was dragged into the violent mob, attacked, beaten, and at risk of being killed with his own firearm, saying that he heard chants from the crowd of "kill him with his own gun." Officer Hodges recalled screaming in agony as rioters pinned and trapped him between a shield and a metal doorframe. He also recalled the traumatic moment when an insurrectionist told him, "You will die on your knees." Officer Dunn told of the racial assault he endured at the hands of Trump's rioting supporters who hurled the N-word, something he said he had never experienced while wearing his police uniform. Officer Gunnell, who had served in Iraq, said that his experience on Capitol Hill on January 6th was more dangerous and more frightening than a war zone. He cast the experience as something from a medieval battle. The Capitol Hill police officers expressed their outrage that some of the politicians they protected on that day showed no respect or gratitude for their sacrifice and instead downplayed the horror that unfolded on January 6th. As noted by Officer Fanone, "I feel like I went to hell and back to protect them and the people in this room, but too many are now telling me that hell doesn't exist, or that hell wasn't actually that bad." In a particularly emotional and powerful moment, Fanone shouted, "The indifference shown to my colleagues is disgraceful," and he slammed his fist on the table. Gunnell said, "It's indescribable. You're defending the indefensible." While the focus on the first day was the long-term impact of the attack on law enforcement officers who were in the thick of the chaos, it was quite likely that the attention would eventually move to Trump, who Democrats believed incited the attack on American democracy. As regards the question of who was responsible, the officers held certitude that person was Trump. Gunnell said of Trump, "He himself created this monstrosity." Dunn demanded accountability and justice, saying, "There was an attack carried out on January 6th and a hitman sent them. I want you to get to the bottom of that." 3 words or phrases articulated by Capitol Hill Police on July 27th were key to understanding the gravity of the events of January 6th: coup, white nationalist insurrection, and terrorists. Of significance was Gunnell's characterization of the attack on the Capitol as a coup. Mincing no words, he said it was an attempted coup. If it were another country, the United States would have sent help. Let me repeat that. If it were another country, the United States would have sent help. Hodges characterized the insurrectionists carrying out the attack on the Capitol as a white nationalist insurrection. Hodges has used those words to repeatedly describe what happened on January 6th. In an interview with NBC News, he described the way he repelled the attackers who flattened him against a doorway, saying, if it wasn't my job, I would have done it for free. It was absolutely my pleasure to crush a white nationalist insurrection, and I'm glad I was in a position to help." Finally, throughout Hodges' testimony, he referred to the insurrection as an act of terrorism and to the insurrectionists who carried it out as terrorists. Explaining this lexicon, Hodges said to Representative Raskin that he was prepared for the question. He then read the legal definition of domestic terrorism verbatim from the US Code. In South Africa, protests have been rocking the landscape in the aftermath of the jailing of former President Jacob Zuma on contempt charges. By mid-July 2021, South Africa was still rocked by turmoil. KwaZulu-Natal province and Gauteng province were particularly hard hit by vandalism, looting, and violence. South African President Ramaphosa said that those responsible had carried out a failed insurrection. He further asserted that it was nothing less than a deliberate, coordinated, and well-planned attack on democracy. But with the emerging theory being that supporters of Zuma had actually orchestrated the violence, and with the government of Ramaphosa only belatedly sending 25,000 troops to patrol the streets, the reality was that the crisis was coming from the heart of the dominant African national movement. It was the Zuma wing of the ANC that quite likely orchestrated the unrest, and it was the Ramaphosa wing of the ANC that had been slow to respond. Staying on the African continent, we're also looking at Mali, where the country's strongman, Assimi Goïta, who led a coup, escaped an attempted assassination. Going back to August of 2020, Mali was struck by unrest and mass protest, ultimately resulting in the overthrow of President Keïta in a coup d'etat, which was carried out by mutinying military soldiers. Goïta was the ringleader of the ruling junta, but to satisfy the international community, the ruling transitional administration had appointed a civilian, Mokhtar Ouane, as prime minister and Ba Ndoye as president. But by May of this year, there was a coup upon coup unfolding in Mali, with Goïta seizing power. Fast forward to July, and the situation in Mali continued to be fractious, with an assassination attempt on the strongman leader Goïta at a mosque in Bamako, the capital. Goïta later appeared on state television to announce that he had escaped unscathed and was very well. Moving across the world to the Pacific, to Samoa, where the appeals court ended the post-election constitutional crisis rocking the Pacific Island nation and confirmed Fiami Naomi Mataafa as prime minister. Mataafa had been sworn in as Samoa's first female prime minister during an extraordinary ceremony outside Parliament because the outgoing prime minister, Malila Goiai, refused to cede power, and his allies locked the incoming majority party out of Parliament. Samoa was thrown into a further constitutional crisis when the Supreme Court ruled that the makeshift outdoor inauguration of Mataafa was unlawful. That judgment then triggered an appeal by Mataafa's FAST party. After 15 weeks of deadlock, Samoa's appeals court ruled that it did not recognize Malila Goiai's caretaker government and that his party was occupying the government's offices unlawfully. Moreover, the appeals court overturned an earlier Supreme Court ruling that the outdoor inauguration was unconstitutional. Finally, the games of the 32nd Olympiad are happening. You'll be able to find coverage from the front page of our Country Watch website at www.countrywatch.com. Next week, I'll cover developments related to Iran's nuclear deal, new Israeli foreign policy, as well as political crises and change in both Lebanon and Tunisia. I'll also cover the spikes in the Delta variant of the COVID-19 virus here in the United States and the undercounting of deaths in India. As usual, for more information about our political stories, read my weekly political intelligence briefing, and for COVID-related stories, my coronavirus report, both of which are accessible from the front page of the Country Watch website at www.countrywatch.com. Thank you for your time. Have a great day, and remember, as always, we live in an interconnected world.